The endless dance. Captain Marcus Rivera stepped off the transport shuttle onto Station Concordia, the neutral diplomatic hub floating in the void between two warring civilizations. The metallic corridors hummed with the subtle vibration of artificial gravity generators, and the air carried the faint ozone scent of recycled atmosphere. After 6 months of hyperspace travel from Earth, he was finally here to witness what historians were calling the galaxy's most embarrassingly persistent conflict. Captain Rivera, the voice was like crystal chimes in a gentle breeze. Marcus turned to see a being that made his breath catch. Ambassador Kethril of the Nexari Collective stood before him, her translucent crystalline skin refracting the station's lights into gentle rainbow patterns. Her feminine form was elegant and graceful, with delicate features that seemed carved from living gemstone. When she smiled, it was like watching starlight dance. Ambassador. Marcus extended his hand in the human greeting he'd been told the Nexari found charming. When Kethril's cool, smooth fingers touched his, he felt a subtle tingle of energy that made his pulse quicken. Thank you for the invitation to mediate. The pleasure is ours, Captain. Your species' reputation for creative problem-solving precedes you. Her voice carried musical undertones that seemed to resonate in his chest. Though I must warn you, this conflict may prove more complex than your briefing suggested. A heavy footfall announced the arrival of General Voss of the Kithran Empire. The insectoid warrior stood nearly 8 feet tall, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming black with bronze highlights. Despite his intimidating appearance, his compound eyes held an intelligence that Marcus immediately respected. Human. Voss clicked in accented standard. You come to resolve what we have not in 3 centuries. Marcus looked between the beautiful crystal being and the imposing insect warrior. I come to understand why you haven't resolved it yet. Sometimes an outside perspective helps. Kethril's laugh was like wind chimes. Perhaps we should show him, General. The observation deck overlooked a section of space that should have been empty. Instead, it contained the most bizarre military engagement Marcus had ever witnessed. Two massive fleets faced each other across several million kilometers. The Nexari ships like floating crystals catching and reflecting light. The Kithran vessels, dark and organic-looking, resembling giant beetles prepared for battle. How long have they been positioned like that? Marcus asked. This particular formation. Approximately 6 months, Kethril replied, standing close enough that he could smell her subtle fragrance, like ozone after a spring rain. The fleets rotate positions every few weeks to prevent stagnation. Marcus watched as occasionally a few ships from each side would engage in what appeared to be carefully choreographed combat. Elegant energy beams lanced out from the crystal ships, while the Kithran vessels responded with precisely aimed plasma bursts. It was beautiful, symmetrical, and completely pointless. This isn't warfare, Marcus said finally. It's performance art. Voss's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. The human sees clearly. Perhaps there is wisdom in your youth. 300 years, Marcus mused, watching another carefully orchestrated exchange of fire. 3 centuries of the galaxy's most polite war. Well, what are you actually fighting about? Kethril's crystalline features shifted in what he was learning to recognize as embarrassment. The Kepler Junction. It's a strategic hyperspace nexus that would provide significant trade advantages to whichever civilization controls it, and neither of you has actually tried to take it. The Accords of Civilized Warfare strictly prohibit aggressive territorial expansion. Voss explained. We maintain defensive positions while asserting our legitimate claims. Marcus felt a smile tugging at his lips. So you're fighting a war where nobody's allowed to attack, over territory that nobody actually occupies, using tactics specifically designed not to cause decisive damage. The silence that followed was telling. Perhaps, Kethril said softly, her harmonious voice carrying a note of vulnerability that made Marcus want to step closer. You could join us for evening meal. The Nexari have certain diplomatic customs that might provide better context for our situation. The way she said it with just a hint of invitation in her tone made Marcus's decision easy. I'd be honored. Ambassador. As they walked toward the diplomatic quarters, Marcus caught Voss watching them with what might have been approval. The general clicked something in his native language. That sounded almost like encouragement. "What did he say?" Marcus asked. Kethral's skin shimmered with colors that might have been a blush. He said, "Perhaps the humans will teach us more than just warfare." Looking at the beautiful ambassador beside him, Marcus had the distinct feeling this assignment was going to be far more complicated than anyone had anticipated. But as Kethral's fingers briefly brushed his arm while guiding him through the station corridors, he found himself looking forward to every challenging moment. The galaxy's most embarrassing war was about to meet humanity's most dangerous weapon, the refusal to accept that something couldn't be fixed. Breaking protocol, the Nexari dining chamber was a marvel of crystalline architecture, with walls that seemed to grow from the deck in organic curves. Soft bioluminescent panels cast a warm, romantic glow that made Kethral's translucent skin appear to glow from within. Marcus found himself mesmerized as she gracefully prepared their meal using what appeared to be controlled energy manipulation. "Among my people," Kethral explained, her melodious voice taking on an intimate tone, sharing. "Sustenance is considered deeply personal. We believe that understanding begins with trust." She offered him a delicate crystal cup filled with a luminescent liquid that tasted like starlight. "And honey, on Earth, we have a similar tradition," Marcus replied, accepting the cup and letting their fingers brush deliberately. "We call it a date." Kethral's crystalline features shimmered with warm colors. "I am unfamiliar with this term. It means spending time together because you enjoy each other's company, usually with romantic potential." The ambassador's form pulsed with soft pink light. "Romantic potential," she repeated thoughtfully. "This is acceptable within human diplomatic protocols?" Marcus leaned closer, close enough to feel the subtle energy field that surrounded her. "Ambassador, some things transcend protocol." Meanwhile, in the station's tactical center, Commander Jade Blackwood was having her own revelation. The human officer stood before a massive holographic display showing 3 centuries of battle data, her sharp analytical mind dissecting patterns that the aliens had never questioned. "War Chief Torvin," she called to the Kithran military advisor reviewing the same data. "Look at this engagement pattern from Sector 7. Torvin approached, his massive frame moving with surprising grace, despite his intimidating appearance. Jade had quickly learned to read the subtle shifts in his compound eyes that indicated curiosity rather than aggression. "The plasma dispersal suggests your ships were deliberately missing optimal targeting solutions," Jade continued, "not by accident, but by design." Torvin's mandibles clicked and what she'd learned was admiration. "Human tactical analysis is refreshingly direct. Yes, we adjust targeting to avoid catastrophic damage. The Accords require measured response, but that's insane," Jade said, turning to face him fully. "You're literally programming your weapons to be less effective. It's like bringing a sword to a duel and then dulling the blade. You speak as a warrior." Torvin observed, his voice carrying a note of respect. "Most diplomats find our directness disturbing." Jade smiled, the expression transforming her. Usually stern features. "Most diplomats haven't spent 15 years in the Terran Marine Corps." "I understand the warrior's code, Torvin. What I don't understand is why you've abandoned it." Their eyes met, his compound orbs reflecting her determined gaze, and something unspoken passed between them. Professional respect began evolving into something deeper. Back in the dining chamber, Marcus and Kethral had moved to a viewing alcove overlooking the endless ballet of ships. The ambassador had abandoned formal diplomatic posture, sitting close enough that her energy field made his skin tingle pleasantly. "Tell me honestly," Marcus said, "when was the last time either side actually tried to win?" Kethral was quiet for a long moment, her crystalline form reflecting the distant starlight. "Perhaps never. The conflict began over principle, continued from pride, and now persists from habit. We have forgotten what victory would even look like. What if I told you there was a way to end this, not through victory or defeat, but through something else entirely?" She turned to him, her luminous eyes searching his face. "I would say that such thinking is why the Galactic Council sent for humans." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And I would say that I hope you succeed, because I find myself wanting a future where we might explore these romantic potentials without the shadow of endless war." Marcus reached out, gently touching her crystalline cheek. The contact sent small sparks of energy between them. Kethril, what if the solution isn't about fighting better, but about not fighting at all? Meanwhile, Jade had reached a similar conclusion through different means. Torvin, your people and the Nexari have created the most elaborate mutual self-deception in galactic history. You're both so committed to appearing honorable that you've forgotten honor sometimes requires decisive action. The war chief's chitinous plates shifted in what might have been embarrassment. Commander Blackwood speaks harsh truths, but change is difficult. These patterns have defined us for generations. Change is always difficult. Jade agreed, stepping closer to the towering alien warrior. But sometimes it's necessary. And sometimes it takes an outsider to see what you can't see yourselves. Torvin looked down at the fierce human female who barely reached his thorax, noting the strength in her stance and the intelligence burning in her eyes. Perhaps, he clicked softly, it takes the right outsider. As night cycle descended on Station Concordia, two very different but equally important connections were being forged. In the crystal chamber, Marcus and Kethril shared quiet conversation and gentle touches, exploring the possibility of affection across species lines. In the tactical center, Jade and Torvin discovered mutual respect evolving into unexpected attraction. Both couples were unknowingly preparing the emotional foundation for what would become the most audacious military gambit in galactic history. The humans hadn't come to choose sides in an ancient war. They had come to end it. The gambit, the emergency session of the Tri-Species Council, convened at dawn cycle, with holographic representatives from both home worlds joining the physical delegation. On Station Concordia, Marcus stood before the assembly, feeling the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down on him like a gravitational field. Honored delegates, he began, his voice carrying the confidence that had gotten him this assignment. I propose we end this conflict within 72 hours. The silence was so profound that the station's life support systems seemed to echo like thunder. Impossible, declared High Nexari Counselor Phylos through the hologram. This conflict involves strategic considerations that span 300 years of carefully orchestrated meaninglessness. Marcus interrupted. Yes, we've established that. What we haven't established is why anyone thinks this is acceptable. Kethril, sitting in the front row, caught his eye and offered a subtle nod of encouragement. Their relationship had deepened considerably over the past 2 days, moving from diplomatic interest to genuine affection. The way she looked at him now, with trust and something warmer, gave him strength. The human speaks blasphemy, rumbled Supreme War Leader Gorvik of the Kithran High Command. Our honor, your honor, Jade interjected from her position beside Torvin, requires you to actually accomplish something. 3 centuries without resolution isn't honor. It's abdication of responsibility. Torvin's mandibles clicked in agreement, causing several Kithran representatives to hiss in surprise. The war chief had been spending considerable time with the human tactical officer, and their growing connection was clearly influencing his perspective. What exactly are you proposing? Asked General Voss, his compound eyes reflecting genuine curiosity. Marcus activated the holographic display, showing both fleets in their current positions. A single decisive engagement. Winner takes all disputed territories. Loser withdraws all claims. Final resolution within 1 battle. The uproar was immediate and predictable. Both sides began shouting about impossibility, honor, tradition, and the sacred accords of civilized warfare. Marcus waited for the noise to die down, then played his trump card. The accords specifically allow for decisive resolution when traditional methods have proved insufficient. He highlighted Section 7C of the Galactic Warfare Conventions. Both sides can agree to suspend standard engagement protocols for a single battle of mutual annihilation or victory. Mutual annihilation. Kethril's musical voice carried a note of alarm, or victory. Marcus emphasized, looking directly at her. The point is, both sides would finally be fighting to win instead of fighting to continue fighting. Admiral Nix Hendricks chose that moment to make her entrance. The commander of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet was a woman who made battleships look delicate by comparison, tall, imposing. with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen the birth and death of stars. Her very presence seemed to add weight to the human's proposal. "Captain Rivera," she said in a voice that could cut through hull plating, "I've brought the observation fleet as requested. 20 ships, fully equipped with recording and analysis equipment. We'll document every moment of your decisive engagement. Observation only?" pressed Counselor Phylos. "Observation only," Admiral Hendricks confirmed. "We're here to witness history, not make it." The debate continued for hours, but Marcus could see the tide turning. Both sides were exhausted by their endless stalemate, and the human proposal offered something they'd forgotten existed: the possibility of conclusion. As evening approached, the formal agreements were finally signed. Both fleets would engage in unrestricted combat in 48 hours, with human observers documenting the end of the galaxy's most persistent conflict. That night, Marcus and Kethril walked through the station's arboretum, where bioluminescent plants from a dozen worlds created a fairy tale landscape of soft, colored light. "Are you afraid?" Kethril asked softly, her crystalline hand intertwined with his human one, the contact sending pleasant sparks up his arm. "Terrified," Marcus admitted, "not of the battle, but of what comes after, if this works." He turned to face her fully, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in her luminous features. "Kethril, these past few days with you, I've never felt anything like this before." She stepped closer, close enough that her energy field enveloped him in warmth. "Nor have I. My people experience emotional connections differently than yours. But what I feel when I'm with you." She touched his face gently, her cool fingers tracing his jawline. "It transcends species, transcends diplomacy. It simply is." Their first kiss was electric literally. The energy discharge was gentle but unmistakable, a biological expression of their deepening bond. When they parted, both were glowing slightly in the soft light of the alien garden. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Marcus whispered, "I want you to know that meeting you has changed everything for me. And you have shown me possibilities I never imagined," she replied. "A future where the peoples might become one." Meanwhile, in the tactical center, Jade and Torvin were conducting their own form of courtship through shared combat analysis, watching the powerful warrior defer to her expertise, while offering insights from his own vast experience created an intellectual intimacy that surprised them both. "If this plan works," Torvin said quietly, his massive form somehow managing to seem vulnerable, "will you remain, or will the humans depart once their mission is complete?" Jade looked up at him, seeing past the intimidating exterior to the lonely being beneath. "That depends on whether I have a reason to stay." His compound eyes shifted to focus entirely on her. "Perhaps we could discover reasons together." As the night cycle deepened, two couples found themselves preparing for a battle that would either end a war or destroy everything they were beginning to build together. But for the first time in centuries, both alien civilizations were contemplating the radical possibility of actual resolution. The humans had done something unprecedented. They had made peace seem more attractive than war. New beginnings. The aftermath of the battle was unlike anything in recorded galactic history, where military strategists had expected decisive victory or crushing defeat. Something far more remarkable had occurred: spontaneous cooperation. Admiral Hendricks stood at the center of the chaos on Station Concordia's main deck, coordinating rescue operations between former enemies. "Captain Rivera," she called out, "we have 17 disabled vessels from both fleets requesting assistance. They're working together to conduct search and rescue." Marcus looked up from the communication array where he'd been coordinating with ship captains who, just hours ago, had been trying to destroy each other. Kethril remained close beside him, her crystalline form pulsing with the soft blue light that indicated deep thought among her people. "Admiral, I'm getting reports of joint salvage operations in Sector 7. Jade announced from her position at the tactical station. Torvin loomed beside her, his massive frame somehow managing to seem protective rather than threatening. "Nexari energy manipulators are working with Kithrin biorepair systems to save crew members." From both sides, "This is not what we agreed." 2. Came the transmission from Supreme War Leader Gorvik, his image flickering in the holographic display. The terms were clear: decisive engagement, winner takes all. "And what exactly would you call this?" Marcus asked, gesturing to the tactical overview. "Both your fleets have been decisively engaged. The question is whether you can see what they've decided." High Nexari Counselor Phylos materialized in the adjacent hologram, her crystalline features reflecting confusion. "Captain Rivera, our preliminary analysis suggests no clear victor. The engagement appears to have resulted in mutual cooperation." Kethril stepped forward, her musical voice carrying new confidence. "Honored Counselor, perhaps that is precisely the victory we needed." The truth was becoming clear to everyone watching the rescue operations unfold. When both sides had finally abandoned their ceremonial approach to warfare and engaged in genuine combat, they had discovered something remarkable. They respected each other. "Look at the battle recordings," Jade said, activating the comprehensive analysis Admiral Hendrick's fleet had compiled. Once individual captains started making real tactical decisions, they began recognizing skill and courage in their opponents. Professional warriors appreciate professional warriors, regardless of species. The display showed moment after moment of the engagement where opposing captains had made choices that revealed their character. A Nexari destroyer that could have destroyed a crippled Kithran cruiser instead chose to disable it, preserving the crew. A Kithran squadron leader who passed up an easy kill to focus on the enemy's most dangerous tactical threat rather than their most vulnerable target. They were fighting with honor, Torvin observed, his mandibles clicking with what Jade had learned was deep emotion. True honor, not the elaborate courtesies that have defined this conflict. They fought as warriors should fight, to test themselves against worthy opponents. Admiral Hendricks nodded approvingly. What we witnessed wasn't a battle to determine dominance. It was 300 years of warriors finally getting the chance to measure themselves against peers. Once they did that, the territorial dispute became irrelevant. Marcus felt Kethril's hand slip into his, their energy connection stronger than ever. "The Kepler Junction," he said suddenly. "Show me the current status of the disputed territory." The display shifted to show the hyperspace nexus that had theoretically been the source of centuries of conflict. What they saw made everything clear. A joint task force of Nexari and Kithran vessels had already moved to establish a collaborative research station. "They're sharing it," Kethril breathed in wonder. "Without orders, without negotiations. They're simply sharing the space, because they realize they're not enemies," Marcus finished. "They never were. They were just two civilizations that forgot how to communicate because they were too busy performing their roles in an elaborate drama." The formal ceremonies took place 3 days later in Station Concordia's Grand Assembly Hall. Representatives from both civilizations, no longer separated by centuries of ritual hostility, worked together to draft the documents that would formalize what their military forces had already accomplished. Marcus stood with Kethril as they watched Admiral Hendricks present the official human analysis to the combined delegation. "Our observation concludes that both the Nexari Collective and the Kithran Empire demonstrated exceptional tactical skill, strategic thinking, and warrior honor during the engagement. The battle's outcome suggests that the optimal resolution involves collaborative control of disputed territories. The humans propose a different kind of victory," announced General Voss, who had become an unofficial spokesman for the new cooperative spirit. Not the victory of one side over another, but the victory of reason over ritual. That evening, as Station Concordia celebrated the end of the galaxy's longest war, two couples found themselves in the Arboretum, where everything had begun to change. Marcus and Kethril sat on a bench beneath alien trees that glowed with soft bioluminescence, their different biologies creating a harmony of human warmth and crystalline energy that neither had thought possible. "The Terran Diplomatic Corps has offered me a permanent position as liaison to the Nexari Collective," Marcus said softly. "I would be based on your homeworld, working to establish formal relations between our species." Kethril's form brightened with joy, colors cascading through her crystalline structure like aurora. "And I have been asked to establish the first Nexari embassy to Earth. It seems our governments believe in the value of close cooperation." Their kiss generated the gentle energy discharge that had become familiar and precious to both of them. a physical manifestation of the bond growing between not just two individuals, but two species. Nearby, Jade and Torvin had found their own corner of the garden. The fierce human warrior and the massive insectoid general made an unlikely pair, but their shared understanding of military honor had evolved into something deeper and more personal. The Kithrin military has requested a permanent human tactical advisor, Torvin explained, his compound eyes reflecting the garden's soft light. Someone who understands both warrior culture and innovative strategy. And Terran Command thinks, "I'm the right person for the job," Jade replied with a smile. "Apparently, I have a talent for cross-species military cooperation, among other talents." Torvin clicked softly, a sound Jade had learned was his equivalent of laughter. As the artificial night deepened around Station Concordia, for beings from 3 different worlds contemplated a future that none of them could have imagined. Just days before, the galaxy's most embarrassing war had ended not in victory or defeat, but in the recognition that some conflicts exist only because the participants have forgotten how to stop fighting, humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization. It turned out wasn't superior technology or military might. It was the simple, radical idea that sometimes the best way to win a war was to help everyone remember why they were fighting in the first place and then give them something better to do together. The stars shone down on a galaxy that was, for the first time in centuries, a little more peaceful than it had been the day before.